20 seconds. Ready? Ready? I'd like to call the Taneytown Planning Commission to order, August the 30th, 2021. Would you please stand for the pledge of the flag, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the records reflect the members of the commission that's here this evening. Welcome, everyone. Commission members should have received the July 26, 2021 draft minutes. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you much. First item on the agenda this evening is the Taneytown Baptist Church request for a site plan approval waiver for a pavilion at 4150 Sales Mill Road. We should have something in our packet. And Darrell, if you want to lead us off on that?
Sure. The request to waive the site plan requirement for the pavilion to be built at Taneytown Baptist Church is well below the 5,000 square foot threshold required for a number of things, but stormwater management, erosion sediment control, and a grading plan. So this would be a good one for a site waiver, a waiver of the site plan approval requirements, if you all feel so.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Any comments from the floor? Any comment from the county or anyone? Jim, do you have anything to add?
Since we're considering a waiver as opposed to going through the site plan process, the county hasn't been brought in on anything at this point. They would only come in if we go through the site plan process. Otherwise, they'll just come in at the building permit issuance stage.
Okay. And at that point, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to proceed with the waiver for the pavilion project for Taneytown Baptist Church at Sells Mill.
I second it.
Okay, motion made and second. Any comments? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Thank you, folks.
Easiest job you've had all week, huh?
Next item is the Meadowbrook Section 7, request for preliminary subdivision plan approval. And is that in combination with a final along with that? Darrell, did you have any comments to start on that?
Mr. Hall has asked, one of the partners in the development has asked that we consider granting final approval concurrent with the preliminary approval. We have, however, not seen plats for the subdivision. I have concerns granting approval, having not seen them, particularly considering our standard practice of submitting plats for recordation with Carroll County Bureau of Development Review. It could prove problematic if we don't have the plats before we do this. Jim, anything else to cover on that?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. I know Mr. Hall's interested in trying to move forward, and he did just this afternoon request that we consider a contingent approval where we would still, of course, route them through a development review for all of the appropriate reviews. And in the event that those reviews came back with the necessary approval letters, to authorize the chairman to sign it at that point, if that all does happen before the next commission meeting. So I know Mr. Hall is looking for a possible contingent approval. And I do want to point out that the letter mentioned in the monthly report for ADA was received today. So that one's on your table there. So we do have everything in place for definitely the preliminary plan approval.
So should we not wait until next month on that?
For preliminary, we can do it. It's the final we should wait on.
Okay.
Am I
Yeah,
correct on that? We could,
It's good to go,
yeah,
yes.
we can.
Yes,
we can-
definitely.
Okay.
So if you want to do things one thing at a time maybe and
Yes, let's do.
batch with that.
I personally like the one thing at a time. So the preliminary, yes, but I'm not comfortable with the final.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to do a preliminary approval.
I'll make a motion for preliminary approval on the subdivision.
Okay, Jim, do you second that? Okay. Any further discussion? Any comments from the floor? County or anyone else?
If
Is there something up there we should be looking at?
Yeah, Mr. Hall.
Because we don't have it down here in front of us.
Oh, it's not on the screen in front of you?
Once his mic takes over, he should pop him in.
Okay.
the contingent, if I may, the contingent approval to allow your staff to handle the final details. Since we're only talking about 4 lots, the only thing we have to change here is the word preliminary on the construction drawings to final. CDM has approved these. We've met earlier with Jim and Kevin, so I think we're all on the same track as far as any construction drawings go. The record plat itself is done. We have not submitted it. That can be probably submitted tomorrow, along with the PWA package, so that we get processing on this. I think we're looking at a very minor amount of comments at the very most on this. And your staff has been excellent to work with and cooperative. We've been trying to do what we can to expedite this. A contingent approval would just avoid bringing it back and spending a lot of time on it that I don't think we need to spend. So at your discretion, folks, but we'd like to get a conditional approval on the final as well tonight if possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. Okay, motion was made and second to authorize or to do a preliminary approval for section 7. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? That unanimous? Thank you. Now, let's have some discussion on the final. Anyone would like to make any comments?
So when it comes back to us next week, if we just stay where we are, what will we expect to see that would be different than where we are now with the work that's been done? Like, might there be any surprises? Is it a matter of just making sure all the T's are crossed and because ADA compliance, that's a pretty big deal.
Right. And that's the one that was the letter that was on your table this evening that did come through. It just, they failed to copy us. So Mr. Hall was able to provide a copy of that because he, of course, was copied. When we move from preliminary approval on a subdivision to final, the difference is really that the final is more construction drawings and then recordation plats that will be recorded through the clerk of the court. We haven't seen the record plats. Those are the drawings that actually create the lots. They'll provide the specific lot dimensions by bearings and all of those details. They'll specify where the easements are on the properties. And part of that package will be deeds of easement and things like that. A lot of legal documents go along with that. The record plats and the construction drawings need to be based on the approved preliminary plan. And in this case, there's really not a heck of a lot for the developer to construct. They're tying into an existing water main, sewer main, and there's no additional public streets. So everything is basically going to be privately owned. So there's nothing new for the city to accept here. other than an easement that will follow along the lines to the cleanouts and the curb stops for the water. So this is an unusual subdivision in that there aren't any new roads or anything like that. So that said, as long as we have the opportunity to review everything before asking the chairman to sign anything, I don't have any objections to a conditional approval, but we just need the opportunity to review it, I think, before all is said and done.
And this is referring to just 4 lots,
Right.
so it's a very small portion to the overall picture of.
And in this case,
Meadowbrook.
because there's not a lot of infrastructure being built, the construction drawings are basically going to look, as Mr. Hall said, very much like the preliminary plan. Essentially the same plan, just final instead of preliminary.
I
That's
believe
correct.
Tony, I'm sorry. Talking.
No, Jim's phrased it very well. That's correct. That's where we are, and I don't. The record plats are the configuration of the lots are already shown on the construction drawings, but the formal plat, as Jim says, has not hit your office yet, but it can be there very quickly.
Since there are other entities involved, probably standard operating procedure would be the way to go.
Right.
So I personally would be hesitant to go ahead and say yes for final. I would not want to proceed that way.
Jay, you have any comments for us?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you can go either way. It's what you're comfortable with. What Mr. Weeprick basically said is that there are unlikely to be changes. If there are changes, even if you gave conditional approval tonight, that would void the conditional approval and it would have to come back at the next meeting. So you're authorizing, if you would do what was requested, you're authorizing just an expedited situation that would be like administrative. However, you are perfectly within your rights to say, we want it reviewed before we see it. So it really depends on the comfort level of the commission.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion one way or the other.
I would think we could give him a conditional approval on the final. They've always worked with us all the way through, so I'll make a motion for that.
All right, is there a second?
And this is for conditional approval,
Conditional
meaning everything meets it, then it'll be.
Yep. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Comments from the floor or otherwise? Okay, all those in favor of the motion of the continuous approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
We thank you. We'll certainly follow through in details with these record plat and public works things as soon as possible. And thank you very much for your cooperation. It'll save us a little time. We appreciate it a lot. Your people have been good to work with, and we'll try to reciprocate.
We're a friendly neighborhood.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Next item on the agenda, FP Duffrey, presentation of preliminary site plan for 2931 Francis Scott Key Highway. Representative.
Good evening. I'm Pete Podolak. I am the engineer on the project representing Duffy Box. My registration number is 19561. Basically, what's proposed is a building addition. Fane Moran, who's with us through video, is the owner and operator of the facility. And he came to me because he's investing in a very expensive piece of equipment. And the equipment is supposed to increase his production. Duffy Box is a cardboard recycling and company. And Fane, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way they do their recycling is really to create boxes from the cardboard and that they're recycling, basically, and turn it into a useful end product. In addition to that, they have cardboard that they do take to the recycling company as well. So this piece of equipment would increase their production, but unfortunately, it's taller than their existing building, and so they need a new space. So what's proposed is a 16,430 square foot building that would be constructed next to the existing building. And the site plan depicts the building. There's also a architectural rendering of the building. For the most part, it's going to match the existing building. That's presented on sheet 9. And the plan consists of providing stormwater management for all of the above. We've made our submittal, our concept plan submittal. We've done our concept stormwater management computations. So we're in the review process. We're just waiting for comments, which are coming in now.
Okay.
Be glad to answer any questions.
All right. One of you two? Or-
Sure. So Chairman, so nothing is expected to be, find my notes here.
This is just a presentation tonight,
Exactly,
right?
Correct.
exactly.
You're not asking for preliminary approval, you just a presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because we do have a couple comments in. Or Jim, would you?
Correct. We have received a couple comment letters and a couple approval letters from agencies that really don't have a whole lot to look at on this particular project. But tonight's a good opportunity to throw any questions at Mr. Podolak's way, since he's here with us tonight. So if anybody has questions for the engineer or Mr. Moran, who's on the screen with us, tonight's a great opportunity. So otherwise, we can just continue on. They'll look at the comments, address them appropriately, and then come back with the revised plan. And hopefully, in another month or so, we'll be before you with a request for approval. So, but tonight, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share while everybody's here, it's a good time to do it.
Okay, well, I'll start out. On, I think, the last page of the drawing, I couldn't find any scale, and I noticed it's in one of the letters. How tall is the building?
That building will be 30-foot clear.
How, excuse me?
30-foot clear from the base to the top.
Drawing shows 30 foot at the end, not at the
Yeah,
peak.
that's.
So what's the peak?
Oh, the peak. That's going to be a function of the cross braces, the metal beams that we get. I don't have that answer at this point in time.
Our maximum is what, 50?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it here. Yeah, your maximum, I think, is 2.5, maximum 50 feet when adjacent to a residential district.
I thought it was,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the front yard. I'm sorry, maximum building height is 50 feet.
talking about the height.
Correct.
Yeah, I think with assuming when more of the building details are available, assuming it follows that same relatively flat slope of the roof, I wouldn't anticipate any issues with the maximum building height. But we do need to see it on the plan when it comes back in.
Yes, this will be a metal frame building, so you'll get girders, I guess, or whatever you want to call them, but they'll be attached to each other, so you'll have beams on the side and then a curvature, and then the roof pitch will come up. But we should be well under the 50 foot. I'd be surprised if we reach 40, to be honest with you.
I was going to say the same thing, Pete. There's the sides don't even have to be at 30. So I mean, we could. I wouldn't see it being over 40 either. Maybe even we just need 30 in the center for basically the conveyor part of the machine. to be going up there.
Okay. And just so I have a better understanding, is the height measured from the floor or from the ground level? Because it looks like there's going to be a loading dock, and the loading dock is 3 feet off.
Yeah,
So is
three-
that, so
correct.
what is the height measured from? The floor or the ground level?
That's a question
I
for
can,
the zoning
I can jump
administrator.
in here. We typically we're as generous as we can be with that when we review. Because buildings rarely have a completely level surface around them, we typically look at the peak of the roof, excluding any chimneys or ventilation equipment or anything like that, but the peak of the main part of the roof to the highest point of the elevation around the building. So if the building's on a slope, we would look at the peak of the roof to the highest point of the slope as the maximum height as the building height. We try to do it in a way that's a little more friendly to the developer. With Evapco, for example, you may recall the building addition, the last time they expanded their office was on a slope. And again, we did it with the way that was a bit more favorable to Evapco by looking at it at the higher point of the grade, so that we wouldn't have to send them through the Board of Appeals with that. So that's how we typically do it. Highest point of the grade to the peak.
Okay, and then I think it mentioned one of the notes about an easement, the sidewalk easement in front. Are we going to request that?
That was in the comment letter, was a request to provide an easement for a future sidewalk. So should that opportunity come up in the future,
I thought the comment was that they was to put it there.
Easement, I think the easement.
Just the
I think the word easement was there, and I'm okay with the easement,
Okay.
even though we got a potential.
But,
With-
now
with
it's time to
activities.
put a sidewalk there.
Well, then that's something that we need to decide and make,
'Cause we got a lot of traffic going out through there,
yes.
foot traffic.
So, okay, well, we need to think about that based on the potential that we have out there now with the activities, with the barn.
With everything. Yeah. And just people walking from lunch and stuff like that.
Okay. And what about parking? It appears the amount of cars that you have out there now compared to the amount that you're asking for, you already exceed that. Is there, what's the expectation there of your parking?
Yeah, we have some flexibility with respect to parking. We wanted to add a couple spaces that were easily accessible for employees. The reality is we were looking at an existing concrete pad that's shown on sheet 2 behind the long existing building to try to convert to maybe some additional spaces. Just to help ease the parking issues. We have automobiles, and then we have a number of tractor trailers that are stored on site as well.
Are they stored there for storage, or are they empty ones? I can remember when we first started this project, many years back, it was like 4 or 5 trailers was going to be in there, and I think there's up almost 40 there now. Are they storage trailers, or are they just something that different people bring them in and you load them, and when they're loaded, you dispose of them, or what?
No. So what the trailers are, obviously when we came in 2006, I think it was, or 5, we started off, you're right, probably 4 or 5 trailers. The nature of our business is we are an industrial recycling facility. So what we do is we leave trailers on site at facilities like Bayer and Pepsi and Procter & Gamble, you name it, and they fill them up. So we have to bring empties when they're full. So most of those are functional trailers that we use to drop and hook at current accounts. There may be a handful of trailers that are if they are deemed unroadworthy, we'll turn into storage. But 80% or more are active trailers that we're using within our weekly fleet. I wouldn't say daily, but we're rotating in and out of customers.
Okay, and something like the figure somewhere, was it like 151 trips a week? Is that,
Yeah, this is a very difficult site because it really doesn't fall into it's not a typical business that you would find in the trip generation manuals. When you start looking at the trip generation manuals, they can be very specific. All the trip generation data is gathered from case studies. So when you get into the industrial section of the trip generation manual, they list what they call light manufacturing, and then they get into the heavier, manufacturing. We're kind of not a manufacturer, we're more of a recycle, but we have the same bring boxes in, take cardboard out. So, the numbers aren't reflective, unfortunately, of how this particular operation works. And Fane can tell you, I don't know how many trucks they have, but just speaking to his employees, we're nowhere near that 156 trip mark. We were just trying to make things work based on the trip generation manual. And so it's somewhat misleading, that number.
I'm not sure where that even came from. We have 6 tractors. We run anywhere from 1 to 2 runs a day with each tractor. So, you're talking probably at the maximum 12 a day. So that would be 60, where maybe an incoming and outgoing, you might add another 3, 50. You're probably half of that, probably. It would be a reality of it.
And that's for a week, right?
For a week, yeah.
For a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, like I said, that number is not realistic, but we had to depict something for the trip generation.
But the trailers aren't there for storage, though, right? They're not storage trailers.
No. As Fane said, what they do is, he has boxes at different locations, or I'm sorry, trucks at different locations to pick up boxes, and they may be there for a couple days till they fill up that entire tractor trailer.
I understand that.
Yeah, so he'll take an empty one, pick up the full one, and keep things moving.
okay. So there's a lot more volume there than what you really think about as the public drives by. When you think about how many loads or how many cardboard boxes goes through that place, So it's a pretty large operation then. But the public doesn't realize, that's all.
Yeah, yes, no,
I didn't realize.
yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? Anyone from the floor or elsewhere? All right. Thank you for your presentation,
All right, thank you.
and good luck with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. There's so many things happen around town that you're not really aware of. The public, you drive by it day in, day out.
Yep.
You don't realize what happens right here locally. Next item. Taneytown Parks and Rec Department requesting a site plan waiver for a storage shed at Taneytown High School and Roberts Mill Park. No, is that real, Taneytown High School, TH?
Yes.
THS, Taneytown High School Park. Okay,
THS.
THS, okay.
So currently at THS Park, there are 3 small wooden structures, 2 of which are, they were horrible 2 years ago when I first toured it as a council member. So 2 of the storage sites will be demolished and taken off site. The third one that's existing will be taken out to the Roberts Mill Park. for storage. It's in pretty decent shape. And a new 12 by 24 inch building on the slab will be put in out there. Have you all been to THS Park, right, high school park? I mean, you can literally put a basketball through a number of holes in 2 of the sheds. It's horrible. So this would be a nice, clean way to spruce up storage. The storage is more than they have now. So growing towards the future. And Lorena, in this plan, has been able to save the city a lot of money by just downsizing the storage facility, which again is more than adequate for today and going forward. And as you all know, we lead by example. So we don't ask of people any more than we would do. So we're asking for the same type of site waiver plan as we've given to others. So we're following all the hoops. There'll be a permit and the whole deal. So we're just asking your approval on this.
Okay. I noticed the size is 25 by 18, but how high is it? I couldn't find that anywhere. 12 foot?
Let me see.
Not in there.
And it appears like it's going to be a flat roof. That's not right. It's not going to be a flat roof, right? I would ask if it was from others for some other drawings.
It's below the 15-foot mark that we allow for. And I thought I read 12 or 13, but pictures are just so difficult to read. On the computer, color-wise, it's a lot better. But I will assure you it's below the 15-foot height requirement we have. How's that?
It'd be nice just to have the full dimensions of it. That's all.
Gotcha.
Isn't one of them storage buildings now a food stand? Aren't
No.
they delivering food out of, am I missing something here? I've stepped there a couple of times.
There is a concession stand out there.
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Yes.
And there's 2 up at the top. I didn't see the third one.
3 there.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
3
they're
there.
in rough shape.
That's that.
They're pretty small. 2 of
Yeah,
them.
they are, because they was running lawnmowers in and out of them when I was there. You know, different people.
And definitely the color schematic doesn't really match the community of the existing, so it's a good move.
The shed to be relocated to Roberts Mill, is that kind of in rough shape too, or is that just not the best black and white image?
It is not. It is in actually very good shape. They're gonna repaint it to match what's out there already.
It's gonna stay there though, right?
No.
No, it's
So
going up with Roberts Mill.
That's going too?
Yeah, be a new one. Yeah, according to this. Okay,
if that drawing is to scale with the door there on the page 2 of your drawings, this should be about 10 or 11 feet tall.
okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we plan the approval waiver for the storage shed for THS Park.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Any comments from the floor? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's that? Okay.
Okay, next item, ordinance and agreement for review. And we'll talk about ordinance 02-2021, amendment to the Community Village Zone, Dara and Shed. Before we really get into this, so we all have the same understanding, what is the responsibility? And I guess that's what Dara stands for. Where does the responsibility end between the developer and the homeowners association? And then how does that come back to the city? I mean, we're talking about 3 different groups here. And can you put them together in some type of motion for me so I can understand in the flow?
Well,
That might be Jay, or I might.
as a community is being developed, typically the developer has essentially functions as the HOA. Before residents move in, they set everything up. As the residents move in and more lots are privately owned, the developer's share or role in that diminishes as more people come into the community. Eventually, when the community is built out, the developer then kind of steps out of the picture, and the homeowners association is then run by the homeowners, who will have their own board. And in this case, they have a professional management firm that's involved with the HOA as well. So typically, they start out run essentially by the developer, who sets everything up. And as you may be aware, I'll use Meadowbrook as an example. Mr. Hall has been very active in that HOA for many, many years now. Even though the community is largely built out, he retains an interest in it, and it's typically in the developer's best interest to make sure that that HOA operates smoothly and is adhering to the bylaws and the covenants. For the duration of construction, because they want to make sure the community stays nice and is the same community that they started selling in the beginning of the project. So over time, the developer fades out and the homeowners take over. The covenants, the initial covenants, last for a certain duration that's specified in there. Eventually, if the homeowners choose to disband the HOA. In some situations, they're able to do that. I haven't seen that happen. We've seen it happen in the city, but not in a community that has any real property that they own or maintain. In the case of Meads Crossing and Meadowbrook and Carroll Vista, for example, they own open space parcels. Meadowbrook owns a playground. They own the entryway, I believe, to the community. Years ago, the Copperfield Homeowners Association did disband, but they didn't own any open space. So that's kind of the routine with it. We do have the homeowners associations that are active now. I believe they all have some property holdings. Creekside has a very modest amount of property, a little strip that goes out to 140 where there's a sidewalk connecting the community to the shopping center area. So more recent history has shown that those HOAs have continued on after the developer has stepped away. But eventually, once the covenants are done, they can be renewed, or they can be, if the association chooses, they can disband, but that gets much more complicated if they have property that they're maintaining. And in the case of Meads, they'll have a pool and a clubhouse, as well as a lot of open space. So I would expect them to be around for a very, very long time.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, let me expand on what the city manager did and talk about the laws. Maybe this can put that in perspective. And I'll break it down into simple terms, and we can get more complex if needed. Whatever the city says goes. So if we say it's not allowed, a homeowners association can't say it is allowed. If the city says it is allowed, the homeowners association, through their covenants, could say it's not allowed. Okay, that makes sense. We deal with the general rules. So ours says you can have a garage or you can't have a garage. Play it either way. The homeowners association would be the ones that would talk about what the garage might look like, what kind of shingles it could be on, what color it could be on. So you can imagine they put the details onto that. So the situation we have in front of you, we brought them both to you at the same time, which has caused confusion. The DARA, if you focus on the DARA is the way we're using to create an exception to the rule. It's going to be put into law based on the zoning amendment. So Forget the DARA for a second, because that's just a deal with the city and the developer. The zoning amendment is going to say you can't do this, which means even if a homeowners association wanted to do it, they couldn't. But it's putting the exception in to say, unless there is a DARA that has been negotiated that puts in the certain terms of what you can do. So that's the way the city is going to get to the allowing this for Meads Crossing. Okay, that is going to be allowed for Meads Crossing. So that is the schematic of how it all fits together. You have two roles. We talked about it briefly last meeting. Your role with the DARA was very straightforward. Is it consistent with the master plan? It almost doesn't even make any sense for you guys to talk about it, because how are sheds consistent with the master plan? But that's the only role a planning commission has in a developer's rights and responsibility agreement. So obviously it would be consistent because there's nothing in the master plan about that. But your second job is to give a comment to the mayor and council about what happens with their zoning ordinance. Their zoning ordinance that is creating the exception, you all have to decide, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Could it be done different? Are you okay with it? You know, the gamut of what you could return to them. They don't have to listen to your recommendation, but they need to hear what your recommendation is. So to give you advice, I would forget the DARA aspect of this in the Meads Crossing case. It really is a red herring. I would focus on, do you like the way this is being implemented, in the fact that the zoning ordinance is going to change and DARAs are going to be used to make changes. And the only change that this ordinance is going to allow is for sheds. So I hope maybe that made it a little more concise for you.
It does, thanks. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this before we move further with it?
I just have a
Smith?
comment that's not directly related, but you were concerned about the continuity of, what happens when we go. And by great luck, we have with us Alicia Menifee, who's our property management with HPS Management. So they are under contract with us and to maintain the HOA. And she does a million things. All of our architectural approval, complaints, things like that, runs through Alicia. And she gets a lot of feedback from the community. So if there's any issue, whether about sheds being desired in needs, she's here to address that. But it's also to show you where she's on board.
Okay. Okay,
I have some more questions.
go ahead.
So how many people in Meads Crossing have expressed an interest in having a shed?
So we work directly with the advisory committee. Several months ago, we had a discussion that the association eventually would turn over to homeowners, that we need to have ethical self-governance, and we need to have an ad hoc committee up and running to start training future board members, right? Always thinking about succession planning. So we have 4 residents on our advisory committee. We sat down and talked and said, what is your feedback and what do you hear from residents? What do you hear to chatter on Facebook? What do folks talk about on the corners? About what they like, what they don't like, what changes would affect their property values. And the biggest feedback we have is sheds, right? I speak almost every week with folks who might complain that they don't have enough space to park their cars because they have to keep the lawnmower in the garage as opposed to in a shed. I send violation letters regularly to owners because they are keeping stuff in the rear of their homes, like play equipment, furniture that needs to be stored in a shed or the garage. And they don't want to put it in the garage because they don't want to lose that parking spot. In terms of a tangible number for you to answer your question, I don't have a tangible number for you. But I know that the shed input, that I get that regularly and often. That's a very hot topic for residents because they want to maintain their lawns and they want to preserve their parking space. Today alone, I drove through about 3 hours ago. I have 4 cars parked over sidewalks. That's a major safety issue for me because the kid walking down the street walking down the sidewalk has to go into the street. And that becomes a safety issue for me. So I have to reach out to each owner. Violation letter, if it continues, they are issued a fine. If it continues on and on, I will put a
First item under the guidelines said all sheds must be located to the rear of the dwelling unit. Does that just mean behind, so it could be just 3 feet behind the house? Or is there an expectation that it would be along the back property line?
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. Could you guys move up to the delegation table so we'll have you in the microphones and such? Thank you.
So where could it be? I think it's going to be, needs to be on a lot-by-lot basis to see, is it more appropriate to be in the rear of the yard or, yeah, I can't answer it uniformly at this moment, just because we don't have enough experience. My initial thought would be, we'd probably want them to tuck it in the corner of the yard, but I can't say that is going to be 100% of the time.
So at a minimum, though, it'd be located to the rear of the dwelling unit?
Yeah, it's behind the rear plane of the house.
Okay. Because driving through, I don't know if y'all have been through recently, but Burnside, Sherman, all of those pretty much, it's a very steep drop.
Yeah,
And it does specify they would need to be level. I mean, granted, I guess if people want to put a lot of money into a shed, they could build up that portion. But still, in some places, it seems like it could be 2.5 feet of a differential.
Right. So there may be instances, just as you say, that it needs to be held further forward in the yard.
But to the rear, not necessarily to the side of the house.
Correct.
Don't they still have to go to like Durham to get a permit to even get the shed?
You'd have to get a permit,
So.
but there is no,
He's also got some say over where it goes, right?
We do, yeah.
Should have.
City code would allow them to be in a side yard or a rear yard, minimum 5 feet from a property boundary. There are some lot-by-lot specifics, but those are the general rules. They can't be in the front yard, and they have to be at least 5 feet away from a property boundary.
And I'm thinking of the nature trail as well, like those yards are very tiny. Like a 12 by 10 would kind of be almost property line to back of the house.
you want to touch a little bit on the metal roof? One of the things you have on here is a racing metal roof. Why metal roof? I mean, that seems like more of a maintenance issue. And since it's supposed to match the property houses and we're not going to have any metal roofs on the houses, why would you have a metal, why would that be in there?
It was to allow it as an option. Frankly, it's, you know, a raised seam metal roof is typically are made of aluminum, and they have a very long lifetime. So it's not meant to be a corrugated metal roof. I would distinguish it from that.
I think that's about the only comments I had.
May I get, so if I understand, Mead's Crossing is considered a village. Is Meadowbrook a village, or is it a neighborhood? Like, what's the difference?
Right. Meads is a community village. It has the community village overlay. Meadowbrook does not. Meadowbrook is a more conventional subdivision.
And on average, the Meadowbrook lots seem larger.
They are, for the most part, they're considerably larger than certainly the standard Meads Crossing lot.
And this only applies for the single-family homes.
Correct.
Okay. Comments?
But I would add, and hopefully we didn't add confusion by this, the second from last bullet, we do say, as I understand it, the city regs, that outdoor enclosed storage structures that are 15 square feet or smaller are not considered sheds, but still require architectural approval. And that is to allow someone to have basically a closet. And we're thinking if under the deck in a townhouse, if somebody wanted something like that, we want to have control over it, make sure that it's attractive, but it would allow that to happen.
I thought we wasn't going to do the townhouses.
We're not doing sheds. It's allowing something to a maximum of 15 square feet, which is it, you can't turn around in it or something.
While we were having these discussions, I pointed out that we have not started to regulate the little like Rubbermaid closet size. Well, I would be hesitant to call them a shed. You know, if you can't step into it and move around, I wouldn't have somebody come in and get a zoning certificate to put up, you know, something like and I keep saying Rubbermaid, there are other brands of them, but essentially like a locker size or closet size, you know, plastic box. I've not required people to get a zoning certificate for those. I don't consider them a structure.
That's more like something you go buy as a package or as a complete build,
Right.
like a two-door
No,
closet.
right, and
basically.
certainly
That
they
you can
do
put the
make
garden
those
hose
closets.
and the
those-
broom and a rake and stuff in.
Right,
Right.
right.
And
Maybe
there's a
the trash can.
catch-22, because if we don't speak to it, well, Jim allows it, he doesn't regulate it, and somebody's gonna come to us and say, well, it, it's not covered in the shed regulations, so it doesn't apply to townhouses. Now, they're allowed, but we have to approve them.
Ollie?
Treated wood, you're not gonna put a foundation of treated wood, are you? It
Well, it would
says-
be some type of foundation.
Yeah, but
You're gonna put it
treated
on,
wood would never last.
treated wood, you put it on stones,
Right.
put it on ties.
But here it says acceptable foundation materials are treated wood, so you're saying that that shouldn't be.
That's not gonna last.
Right. So right now, the ordinance that we're discussing, anybody can, in a townhouse can put up a little closet
Well,
right now?
that's what we don't.
I can answer that.
Yes, please.
Any exterior change to the property that is a permanent change requires ARC approval. So if they want to paint the door color, they need to take it through my office. If they want to put up a wreath on their front door, I don't need to give them permission to do that. And so this is a very gray area, because how permanent is that storage closet under the deck? Well, my belief is it would be permanent, that they're going to keep it there for at least a year. So I would like to have architectural control over that, so when they start to rust or the doors fall off, I can be the sheriff and go in and say, please repair. This is becoming an eyesore.
But I could still put my motorcycle underneath the deck with a cover over it.
No, you may not. No,
Okay.
in the garage.
In the garage, okay. I think I stepped on some toes. All right, any other comments?
I'm just having a hard time with the lay of the land on some of those homes. Like, it really seems to drop off right off the back. And I don't know.
Not working. We're not guaranteeing everybody's life.
Sure. Well, like this lad who was here last meeting, was talking about equitability, and that was his large push. And if it wasn't on the table beforehand, you know, after the fact, not that I need to look out for everyone's feelings, but this idea of being disgruntled because it wasn't on the table in the first place, and now I have a plot of land that can't support this new want that maybe I didn't know was a possibility in the first place. That's just, that's where I'm hung up, was
Well,
a
it
lot
gets
of
more
question marks.
complicated than that, because the sales agents were saying, sure, you can have a shed. And then they came to find out that the city didn't allow them. So it goes back to what Jay was saying, that the higher authority at that point rules, and that's why we're here today.
All right, so get us back on track.
So the ordinance enables a developer to request through their DARA to be allowed to have the sheds.
Say it again, slower.
So the ordinance enables the DARA as a vehicle for them to have the sheds.
Right, so what are you asking us as
So-
a motion or a recommendation
Right.
or approval or
So tonight-
consideration or what?
Tonight is your opportunity to make a recommendation or comment on the pending ordinance, the zoning ordinance.
Okay. I'll make that a motion.
Well, do we need to make it a motion, or is it just a recommendation?
I want to do it as a motion, I think.
Right. So you can move
wanna do it as a
to, you can move to recommend favorably, unfavorably, or somewhere in between.
Do it as a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
What was the motion? I was listening too.
Well, that's why I asked Jim to repeat it slowly, so I put the
support-
right words in
to-
there.
To recommend approval of the ordinance, or,
That's simple enough. That's simple, yeah.
okay,
Recommend
okay, so
approval of
that's
the
your
ordinance.
intent
And the
to
ordinance
make a
is
recommendation to
To
approve.
allow, right.
Okay.
And was there a second now?
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
Okay, Ollie seconded. Open for discussion. Hate to take comments from the floor, I think we've heard enough.
This is also, these buildings are going to be controlled by two people. Correct.
When-
It's not just you, it's also the town.
Right.
So it's not like it's just out there as it wants to be.
Is there an estimate as to when the HOA would be a self-advising council?
Yes,
When might that be?
sometime next year,
Okay, so about a year
probably
away.
8 to 10 months out.
Okay, let
My
me,
understanding, and Jay could correct me, my understanding is that is statutory by number.
The
So I
two-thirds
forget
number?
Whether it's 70 or 75%, but the process has to begin at that moment.
It's 75%.
75.
does the county, Kaylin, you have any comments?
I do not believe I can comment on this.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so we got one, two, we got four, and one against. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Wasn't there two things there?
No,
knew-
we took care of the other one last time.
We did. Okay. All right. Moving on. Carol, and your report?
Just pretty small. Everything else has been, except for two items, have been covered so far. The mayor and council approved the annexation agreement with the Soul property at their August 9th meeting. The agreement was not signed on the 27th. There's still some questions with the Souls and I believe the developing agent. So they're going to come back to us very soon with some more information as we get it. So whereas the council, mayor and council agreed to the annexation, no one on their side is against it, but they're just not ready to move forward with signing the agreement yet. But so as soon as we find out, we'll let you know.
Okay.
We are meeting tomorrow with Wilson Bounds, Jim and I, to discuss the annexation of Mr. Bounds' property. And Jim, is there anything else on that?
If we do end up moving forward with the Bounds property, it will be on a separate path from the Sewell annexation. But again, just knowing whether that may be coming in on the heels of the Sewell property may inform some design decisions on both properties. So we would have the opportunity to look at them, as a larger planning area.
Okay. Any other questions on that, y'all?
No, not until you want to move into the projects, the active.
Well, one more item. So we issued 20 new home certificates this month. And as of this morning, and there may be more sitting in land box right now, 17 in Mees and 3 in Meadowbrook. So the city, she's getting bigger.
Okay. Anything special moving on and with the active projects?
Jim, I don't have anything on that.
Really nothing that we haven't covered earlier in the evening.
Okay. Have we made any progress with that vacant lot next to Harney Road, the new development down there being mowed?
I think you did a notice on that one, I think, the, gosh, what is the name? I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the corner of Westview and Harney.
Yeah, 000, right?
Yeah, but you got a notice out on that
Yeah.
one, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
So we are making
So,
progress.
a violation
I mean,
notice has
for a new
gone out.
development to open up like that and have something right next to it, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not the tasteful thing to have.
That's so true. It's amazing, there's been a shortage of mowers. Plus with the weather being the way it's been, it's just enough time that I've even let mine grow a little bit longer than normal, just trying to get to it, you know, perfect day, perfect storm, and then you can't mow. So, but yeah, they will be advised to, mow a little bit more, frequently.
Has anybody ever thought about Westview Drive, making that one way? You know, that's very hard to do when there's two cars, because you can't pass.
We are digging back through commission minutes. There was talk when Taneytown Crossing was going through the development review process about restricting parking on Westview to one side.
I brought that up.
We definitely discussed it. I don't remember what the end result of that was, and I don't think we made a formal decision to restrict parking. I think it was more of a, let's wait and see when everything is built out and the construction traffic's not there. That's something that we can do on our own, independent of the developer. You know, once we see what the traffic patterns are and everything and what the parking patterns are, if we see that it's a safety hazard, we can certainly post one side or the other with no parking.
So it's getting to be a parking hazard or a hazardous right now.
Yes.
And it's not even filled up yet. But we'll watch it.
Yeah.
I will.
And
Too.
with the width of the street being what it is, there is, if you just look at the street width and you figure an 8-foot travel lane and perhaps a 7-foot parking lane, it's close, but it is passable for 2 cars to pass when a car is parked on either side. But if somebody's 19 inches from the curb, it's not going to work. So, if it's all done properly, it should work, and it may slow speeds if there's cars parked on both sides. That does tend to provide a kind of a traffic calming effect, but it also makes it less comfortable for people to drive when it's narrowed by parked cars. So there's some good and bad with it, but I think we just need to wait and see how it plays out once Taneytown Crossing is completely built out and occupied, and we'll see if we have a safety issue there or not.
If you let it go too long, it's gonna be very hard to stop.
Yeah, especially on weekends when that pickup truck with that trailer parks along the side.
Well,
The trailer
and
stands up.
you never go up and down through there that they're not parked the wrong way.
All right, moving on. Jay, you're next on the list.
I'm going to make it easy for everybody. I don't have anything to add for my report other than what we've already talked about.
All right, thank you very much. Kaylin, County?
Hi, yes. Let me see. There's my camera. We are currently have a deadline coming up for our fall 2021 Water and Sewer Master Plan Amendment. The application is September 6th. And the timeline for the certification is going to be October, November, and then the Board of County Commissioners briefing and public hearing will be about November, December. And then as for the comprehensive rezoning, they just recently submitted their recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners in August. So we will hear more about the county commissioners' opinions on the comprehensive rezoning soon. And then finally, for the transportation master plan, we are working on a second survey to come out in the fall. And that's all I have.
Anyone have any comments or questions for her? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other business, go around the room. Lee? Brad?
No.
Holly?
Already
Jim?
said it.
Okay, anyone from the floor? Okay, the only thing I have is, I hope everyone's planning that can go to the Maryland Planning Conference in October, the 26th and 27th. And since that's on a Tuesday and Wednesday, I would like to suggest that in October, we move our meeting to October the 8th, so we allow time to get there on Monday, so we don't have to leave early on Tuesday morning. So we got 2 months away, so what's the commission's thoughts on that?
I will be unavailable for that meeting.
What, the 18th?
The 8th?
18th.
Okay.
18th.
18th, okay.
Did I say the 8th?
You said the 8th.
I'm sorry about that, I meant the 18th. That's good? Then that's what we'll do. That work for you, Jim?
October 18th?
October 18th.
That should work.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Jay, when you get a moment, give me a call anytime.
Will do.
Thank you.